I'm Deborah Huntley, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Saginaw Valley State University. And today I'm going to read an excerpt from Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. When Maya Angelou was a very young girl, she was raped and traumatized by that, as you might imagine. And as a result of that trauma, she found it very difficult to speak to people and to communicate with them. And this passage that I'm going to read describes how she began to find her voice again. For nearly a year, I sopped around the house, the store, the school, and the church like an old biscuit, dirty and inedible. Then I met, or rather got to know, the lady who threw me my first lifeline. Mrs. Bertha Flowers was the aristocrat of black stamps. She had the grace of control to appear warm in the coldest weather, and on the Arkansas summer days it seemed she had a private breeze which swirled around, cooling her. She was thin, without the taut look of wiry people, and her printed dresses and flowered hats were as right for her as denim overalls for a farmer. She was our side's answer to the richest white woman in town. She was one of the few gentlewomen I have ever known, and has remained throughout my life as a measure of what a human being can be. Now Maya writes of her first visit to Mrs. Flowers' home. The sweet scent of vanilla had met us as she opened the door. I made tea cookies this morning. You see, I had planned to invite you for cookies and lemonade so we could have this little chat. The lemonade is in the icebox. It followed that Mrs. Flowers would have ice on an ordinary day, when most families in our town bought ice late on Saturdays, and only a few times during the summer to be used in the wooden ice cream freezers. She took the bags from me and disappeared through the kitchen door. I looked around the room that I had never in my wildest fantasies imagined I would see. Brown photographs leered or threatened from the walls, and the white, freshly done curtains pushed against themselves and against the wind. I wanted to gobble up the entire room and take it to Bailey, who would help me analyze and enjoy it. Have a seat, Marguerite, over there by the table. She carried a platter covered with a tea towel. Although she warned that she hadn't tried her hand at baking sweets for some time, I was certain that, like everything else about her, the cookies would be perfect. They were flat, round wafers, slightly browned on the edges and butter yellow in the center. With the cold lemonade, they were sufficient for childhood's lifelong diet. Remembering my manners, I took nice little ladylike bites off the edges. She said she had made them expressly for me, and that she had a few in the kitchen I could take home to my brother. So I jammed one whole cake in my mouth, and the rough crumbs scratched the insides of my jaws, and if I hadn't had to swallow, it would have been a dream come true. As I ate, she began the first of what we later called my lessons in living. She said that I must always be intolerant of ignorance, but understanding of illiteracy, that some people, unable to go to school, were more educated and even more intelligent than college professors. She encouraged me to listen carefully to what country people called mother's wit, that in those homely sayings was couched the collective wisdom of generations. When I finished the cookies, she brushed off the table and brought a thick, small book from the bookcase. I had read A Tale of Two Cities and found it up to my standards as a romantic novel. She opened the first page, and I heard poetry for the first time in my life. It was the best of time and the worst of times. Her voice slid in and curved down through and over the words. She was nearly singing. I wanted to look at the pages. Were they the same that I had read, or were there notes, musics, lines on the pages as in a hymn book? Her sounds began cascading gently. I knew from listening to 1,000 preachers that she was nearing the end of her reading, and I hadn't really heard to understand, a single word. How do you like that? It occurred to me that she expected a response. The sweet vanilla flavor was still on my tongue, and her reading was a wonder in my ears. I had to speak. I said, "Yes, ma'am." It was the least I could do, but the most also. "There's one more thing. Take this book of poems and memorize one for me. Next time you pay me a visit, I want you to recite." I have often tried to search behind the sophistication of years for the enchantment I so easily found in those gifts. The essence escapes, but its aura remains. To be allowed, no, invited, into the private lives of strangers and to share their joys and fears was a chance to exchange the southern bitter wormwood for a cup of mead with Beowulf or a cup of hot tea and milk with Oliver Twist. When I said aloud, "It is a far, far better thing that I do than I have ever done," tears of love filled my eyes at my selflessness. On that first day, I ran down the hill and into the road, few cars ever came along it, and had the good sense to stop running before I reached the store. I was liked, and what a difference it made. I was respected, not as Mrs. Henderson's grandchild or Bailey's sister, but just for being Marguerite Johnson.